So welcome to the 12th episode of Gen Z Investing Insights. We have Charles here from HiDO Health, and I'm going to just start off with the questions right away. So most of our listeners are in high school and in college. So can you go into a little of what like high school and college was like for you?
Yeah, so it was a few years ago. I graduated, yeah, quite some time ago. But high school, I was really focused on sports, so I did both wrestling and a little bit of water polo, and yeah, I just had a good time in high school, and I enjoyed sports and just looking to the next steps and going to college.
Yeah, what was college like?
Now college was awesome. I, I definitely enjoyed myself. It was great times, a lot of memories, and definitely integrated school into the picture. But yeah, I had a great time, enjoyed myself. I was able to get the degree, not as fast as I wish I did, but I managed to get it done. So
Did you get into like health and AI at all in college or high school?
no, absolutely not. No. So my experience with healthcare was really by happenstance. My brother was going down a career in investment banking, and I was following his footsteps. So I was studying finance in college, and I was working at Wells Fargo in a banking capacity. And then when I was around 20 years old, I thought I had a kidney stone, and it actually was misdiagnosed by a physician, and it was a ruptured appendicitis. So I spent several weeks in the hospital in the ICU, and that changed my career trajectory.
Is that where you got interested in health?
Yes, I wasn't just interested, I was thrown into it because, being a little bit younger at that time, I was very naive to the complexities of healthcare delivery and the coordination of care, and firsthand experiencing not only a misdiagnosis, but also trying to navigate the system. Being a little bit younger, it was quite a challenging time for me.
And with that experience, is that where you got into Johnson and Microsoft?
Later down in my career. So it spurred my interest within healthcare because I wanted to understand what that system looked like from a firsthand account. So after I was finished with college, I started with Johnson and Johnson in the Bay Area, which many of your viewers are accustomed to. And I had a lot of communications with different type of subspecialties in the market. And that really gave me a firsthand account of what physicians are thinking, but also getting the experience from a patient perspective, how these different molecules were performing.
And where did you get that interest in the intersection between AI and healthcare?
Yeah, so that was a little bit later during my career where I was actually thrust into a spotlight where I was at a medical device company at that time, and we were studying computer information systems. And some of the same curriculum that they were teaching within the company was the same curriculum within the master's program at UC Davis. So that's when I thought to myself, well, if I'm already studying health information systems, I might as well get the credit for it and finish up the degree. So that's pretty much where I took a little shift in my thought process about education and pursuing a master's degree.
Alex, you want to take over?
Yeah, so I mean my first question would be how did you come up with the idea? But you answered that. So I have a question regarding like kind of marketing because like what's your target audience in a sense?
Yeah, so when we first started with pen and paper, and my handwriting is absolutely terrible. So it looks like hieroglyphics. So I had a number of artistic people really put those designs together and put the vision into reality. But when you first start a company, it wasn't by plan, it was more by happenstance. So I was a mentor at StartX Med, which is a Stanford-based accelerator for a company that specializes in computational data drug discovery. And that gave me an opportunity to meet some very unique advanced engineers. So you have to think about the team and the picture and the vision before you actually put the reality of the company coming together. So it prompted almost like a flywheel effect, because once you start building your network and you have an idea, you can actually take it and execute upon it. So that was really the foundation of the company, and actually pushing things forward.
So like what would like your target audience be? Or like when you started off, like you kind of want like a smaller target audience. So what was like the real target?
And so this is a little bit different of a opportunity. HiDO specializes in AI assisted robotics, and what we do is really smooth out behavior modification. So patients are able to follow the prescribing regimen of physicians. When you start thinking about it, healthcare is a $4 trillion a year marketplace, so there is no small audience.
Yeah.
This is a very, very, very large opportunity when you're talking about total addressable markets in the hundreds of billions of dollars. That's considered a small market. So when we first started, what we were thinking about is not so much the go-to-market plan. It was really how many people can we impact? So if you start thinking about life sciences and pharmaceutical companies and clinical trials, many people are skeptical of some of the data or the data integrity. So can we smooth that out by actually ensuring people are taking medications as intended, and we're able to record that for those pharmaceutical companies. And downstream, what you get is the potential to accelerate drug delivery in clinical trials with very strong data integrity.
So since you said it's such a large market, I noticed that there's quite a few competitors. I believe there's 170 active competitors. Does that number kind of like scare you in a way, or since it's such a big market, it doesn't really, it doesn't have that much of an impact to say?
Yeah, so when you think about competition, you have to describe that a little bit more. If you're referring to a plastic pillbox as competition, that's not what we do. We have patent approved for the system design architecture, as well as electronic transmittal of embedded RFID solutions within the cap. So what HiDO does different than anything else in the marketplace is we automate the entire process for the end user. So you walk up to the device, we use Face ID, and it unlocks, and then it dispenses according to your prescribing regimen. And we have sensors to catalog that, and then you have that recording on the back end. So we're the only ones in the marketplace that actually know what's going on in the home. Everything else is based upon, Alex, Jacob, do you take your medications, and you're telling your physician, or you're writing it down whether or not you did that. And that's just not an accurate methodology.
I think another question I have more towards the product side is that there's multiple touch points here where it's the pharmaceuticals who have to give you the data of how much the user is taking in medications, but there's also the user themselves. So you're having to sell to different people. What is that process like?
Interesting perspective. So the patients that we serve are chronic care patients. So this is primarily for health plans, and we focus on the 1% of the population that cost about 39% of all medical expenditures. So people that have cardiovascular conditions, they might have underlying diabetes, obesity, and some other auxiliary things. Those patients, they want to be like you and me. So I'm going to ask you a trick question. How many caregivers do you think there are in the United States?
Tens of thousands.
Alex?
I'd say 100,000 maybe.
Okay. There's 40 million caregivers in the United States. 40 million people are helping loved ones, friends, and family in the United States. That's a big number. So take this into context. Those people are dependent on others helping assist them at home with these things called ADLs, which are assisted daily living activities. One of those is medications. You can smooth out people's disease if they're taking their medications as prescribed. Do you think those patients want to be dependent on these caregivers to remind them to take medications, or do you think they want that independence and freedom?
They want the independence.
Yeah, I agree.
They want to be just like you and I. They want to live a normal life. So there's many millions of people with chronic care conditions that are solely dependent on others to help them. And what we do is we help them help themselves with the HiDO device.
How, in your experience, what was the process of like iterating your product to make it more frictionless and easier for the user to use?
Yeah, so I think what's different about why we started this company, and when we started, it was really about the patient in mind the entire time. So my background's in data science. What I was really interested in is the primary inputs to track whether or not people are actually taking their medications as intended. And we looked in the marketplace. We were looking at the competition, trying to determine if somebody already solved that. And I was under the impression that this was solved many, many years ago. But then once you start looking at it from a user perspective, you quickly realize the user has to do everything. And if the user has to do everything, then your adoptability is not there. So you have to design in such a way to completely make things seamless and easy to use. And so from an engineering and a design perspective and UI, there's a lot that goes into that so you can increase the usability of a device.
Alex, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, so I was just kind of wondering for like marketing this product to people, how do you go about that? Is that prescribed by like doctors where they're like, oh, like this would be an interesting thing, or is it something you'd go out and get by yourself? Like, how is it marketed?
It's not. So this is not a DTC market. This is an enterprise B2B sale. So this is a health plan or a veteran home health company that's identified specific users that require this AI assisted technology at home. So a doctor would not be prescribing this. These folks have been identified based upon the number of hospitalizations or emergency room visits or other parameters that bring them to the top of the list where they'll be able to utilize this.
Has there been any concerns over data privacy because you do have to use the different prescriptions and the number of prescriptions and also that face data?
Yeah. So what type of phone do you have, Jacob?
I have an iPhone 11.
Okay. Alex, what type of phone do you have?
I have an iPhone 14.
Okay. How do you feel about those having cameras on there and using the Face ID function?
It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
Okay. And when you walk around town, are there cameras all over the place?
Yes, there is.
Yes, there is. So all of that information is being recorded, whether or not we are aware. Now, within the healthcare domain, we have specific compliance standards where there's a HIPAA and there's a couple of other compliance standards that we have to have encrypted data. It's got to be SOC 2 compliant. So our standards are pretty rigorous. So all of those data sets that you speak about, the Face ID function, the types of medications, and any of the PHI, which is patient health information, that's all secured or encrypted.
Alex, do you have any more questions?
I mean, I guess this is more like kind of like a broad question, less about that. But like for people who are starting companies, I feel like VC funding is something that people really want to get. And so you guys you guys have raised quite a bit of money. So what would be like the first couple of steps and some advice you would give to new CEOs of like startups that need funding?
Yeah. It is a roller coaster ride. So if you're looking for funding, the most important thing is to develop relationships. So it's not a fast process. So if you're looking to churn and burn, it's not going to work. A lot of this business is built upon long-standing relationships, being able to clearly and concisely explaining your story so other people understand it, but they also resonate with it. So you have to find whichever path you're going down, those types of folks that truly believe in that vision and want to make it become a reality, and then grind over and over and over and get your pitch down, and then potentially distribute your message on a larger platform so more people will be aware of what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, going more into that founder perspective, how do you balance feedback from a customer perspective, but also a venture capitalist perspective? Because those are two people that you're trying to get money from and get feedback from.
Yeah, so I think it depends on, again, your outlook. The most important thing is the customer or the patient, because their feedback is developing your product and your features and your benefits, and also the usability and the longevity of your company. So, customer service is super important because you gain so much by listening to people's feedback. Now, the other perspective is your funding perspective, the investors. Those are different milestones. So when you have those conversations, you lay out what you're going to accomplish, and based upon hitting those parameters or markers, then typically what happens is they'll fund you again. So it's not a one and done type of thing. We have people that have invested in HiDO 2 or 3 times. And it's because we tell them what we're going to do, we hit those milestones, and then we want to continue to push forward and further grow the company. And that requires, additional capital.
Alex, do you have any more questions?
Those are all my questions.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to earlier towards when you were spending time at Stanford. Did you meet anybody at Stanford that really helped you along this process of creating the company and still going through it today?
Yeah, so I've met a number of influential folks. So one is an advisor, so it's Dr. Phyllis Gardner. So she was the one that was a skeptic of Theranos, which is a company that's now defunct. But she is, a number of folks I've had the pleasure to get to know, and not just, they're not just people that are on the page, but you actually get to know them and their families, and they give you a tour of, of their insights. And so, it gives you a unique opportunity to get to know people beyond their professional scope, but their personal relationships and what they're trying to accomplish during the course of their life. So yeah, I've been able to meet a number of folks and gain perspectives. And I continue to lean on these people because they do have a lot of influence in the trajectory of the company, as well as, introducing folks that I normally wouldn't have access to.
What do you think there's any unique struggles, especially in healthcare, where you're as an enterprise, and it's B2B, right? As an enterprise B2B, it's different from when you're just selling to consumers. What are like the unique challenges that you face as a company when you're going B2B?
So my expertise is in enterprise B2B sales, and they're long, complex cycles. So because of the total addressable markets being so sizable, when you start thinking about an organization and their priorities and their strategic objectives, you're not convincing one person. There's a decision makers. There's teams and teams of people that you'll impact based upon the different type of workflow or decisions that they make. And then they have to allocate operational budgets. And there's a lot of decision making that goes on in the background that I think people aren't aware of. And you have to have everybody agree upon moving forward with a strategic decision, because that's such a large impact and implications for many millions of people.
I think you answered this question a little bit earlier, but talking about me personally, I do have a lot of allergies and I do have to take medication sometimes. Um, when you try and talk to customers, are they more of older people like 50 plus, or are they also like younger, like less than 25?
Yeah, I think there's a variety of different patients that we serve depending upon the disease. As I think of things, there's really three pillars of health. One is, diet and nutrition. Two is exercise and mobility. And if for some reason those first two you can't control, the third is through medications. And you might have to take these medications because you have an underlying disease, or you could thank your parents for, carrying on, specific genetic traits, but you are reliant on these specific medications. One might be for respiratory issues. So you have to take those medications on a series of basis to ensure that you have, some type of stabilization. You can live your life normally. So now, the age ranges, to your point, as you get older, you tend to take more medications. But the majority of people, there's 20 to 30% of the population that have some type of chronic care disease. So, heart failure, cardiovascular, diabetes, that's common, especially respiratory issues such as asthma or COPD.
Yeah, how do you I have asthma. How do you think HIDO really impacts or solves a lot of problems for people with asthma?
Yeah, so I think it depends upon the amount of medications you're taking. But let's just assume that you're busy with school, you have a couple of business ventures that you're starting up, so your mind may not be specific to, did I take my medication, did I forget my medication, do I have an inhaler? If what we do is we smooth that process out, so it's no longer patient dependent. Now you get a reminder on the phone, or you go up to the device and you can track whether or not you're taking your medications versus having to remember. Because I imagine, you correct me if I'm wrong, Jacob, do you keep a diary of whether or not you take your medications and the time you take your medications?
No, I do not.
Okay. So if it was done for you and you didn't have to do that, it'd probably be a little bit easier than the current state.
All right. Alex, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I mean, this one was kind of answered, but I just want to like re-ask it. So for people like, for instance, my grandma, she takes medication daily, but like, would she eventually be able to use this? Because you said it's only for like specific people B2B. So like would this be something that's accessible to everyone in the future?
Yeah, so let's talk about your grandma, right? So let's say grandma's on 5+ medications and she's covered by Medicare. Maybe she's a Medicare Advantage plan, and we have a contract with them. They isolate, based upon, if she struggles. So let's say that she's had a number of hospitalizations or emergency room visits, and she needs some help. Then that's when the HIDO device would come into play. Right now, it's not accessible to the total market. That's not to say in the future that it might be.
All right. I think actually I have one more question. This is more general though. Just general advice you have for founders who are really early in their company and have a vision and want to execute on it. Any advice for them?
Well, I'm going to turn the question on you, Jacob. What are you working on?
I'm working on a company called Notify Invest, and we want to democratize investing, where we want to create a platform that makes investing more open and collaborative.
Okay, so my advice for you and your audience is, continue to get your message out there. Continue to develop a community of like-minded individuals that want to push the message and utilize it. Listen to your customer base, and also friends and family and friends of friends. Develop that network so people are aware of what you're doing, and find your supporters so you can continue to build that momentum. And when you say you're gonna hit a milestone, you got to hit it, and you got to let people be aware of what you're working on, and repeat and rinse that message over and over again until you develop something so strong and powerful that instead of you having to speak about it, people are coming to speak to you.
All right. I think that wraps it up. Unless Alex, you have any more questions?
No, I'm good.
Thank you, Charles.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.